Welcome to the Equine Vet Connect podcast. I'm your host, Dan Carter. I'm a veterinarian and a farrier. The goal of this podcast is to educate horse people, break things down, bust myths, and keep it real. Speaking of breaking things down, here's my legal disclaimer to keep my attorney and insurance company happy. While I am a vet, I may not be your vet. Contact them before trying anything you hear on this podcast. Remember, just because you watched it on YouTube or heard it on a podcast does not mean you can do it. Please use common sense. Welcome back to the Equine Vet Connect podcast here at Countryside Equine Hospital. I'm Dan Carter. I've got Ashley Kowalsky with me today from Kowalsky Saddle Shop over in, you're in Homer, Georgia.
Yep, Homer, Georgia.
So right outside of Athens. This is kind of cool because I had a customer of mine, Alexa. She asked me, she's like, Dan, I wish you'd relate more stuff to Western. And I was like, well, you just hold tight. I got a whole podcast just for you, Alexa.
That's right.
So we've got an interesting topic today. I feel like in the Western world, this often gets forgotten. In the English world, saddle fit is really important. And a lot of time is spent fitting saddles. But I feel like in the Western world, a lot of people don't think about saddle fit.
That's right.
And as someone like that, that's my background. I came out of the cowboy world. I worked on ranches I always say I've seen the Canadian border and the Mexican border, about everything in between on a horse's back. And it's important.
Definitely.
It's just as important in the Western world as it is in the English world.
Well, and it's really important for a cowboy.
Yes.
For their saddle to fit, because they spend more hours on a horse than anybody.
Oh, I mean, we used to saddle horses up at 4:30 in the morning, and we may not step off that horse up to eat lunch.
That's right.
Till 5-6 o'clock that night.
Yeah, and I think a ranch saddle is probably the most important saddle to fit a horse because of that reason. Mm-hmm. And if it don't fit, you're going to know.
You will know.
You will know, because you're going to have galds and rub spots and an uncomfortable horse for sure.
And that's why I'm kind of excited today, because I think we often forget. I mean, the saddle is kind of what connects us to our horse.
That's right.
And there's a lot of differences, and I see a lot of different saddles come in. I see a lot of different saddles on the market. And where I'd like to go today is let's talk about what all's involved in a Western saddle and what makes them unique, what makes them different, and just let's go through, making sure you've got the right fit, because I don't feel like it's ever discussed.
That's right. No, I agree.
So let's talk. Let's always start. I remember when I was in vet school, we talked about anatomy first, because if you don't know what it is and where it lives, then you can't move forward. So let's talk a little bit about, let's call it the anatomy of the saddle and what we start with when you start building one. Yeah.
So this is the tree of the saddle, which is the structure. The foundation of what we build on. And so these are ponderosa pine and rawhide covered. Mm-hmm. Of course there's a ton of trees out there, from, you can have them to where they're wood, but then they'll be fiberglass, or they have some that are Kevlar coated. They have composite trees, which are like plastic. And but I just think, and we have used some of the Kevlar coated trees, mm-hmm. and I have nothing against them. They hold up really well, and they're very durable. They say they're stronger. I don't know if they're stronger or not. The rawhide covered trees, I feel like they're just time tested, and they have just been around forever. And I think saddle making is, I don't know exact years of how long, saddle makers have been building it, but it's still a very old tradition. We still build them the same way that we built them a long time ago, even all the way down to your, cheapest saddle that you can buy, still put together by hand, mm-hmm. So it's a handcraft that's been there. Well,
and I should have started here, but how did you get into building saddles?
Well, I first started, I started working for Caldwell Saddle Company. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I've always rode horses and trained horses, and we've raised horses my whole life. And my husband and I, that's still what we do today. And but I kind of got my start there. I started working for them in 2010, and it was kind of just, I just needed a job, and I was like, well, I ride horses. Building saddles just fits right in my life, So I started working for her and Tom, and then it just kind of led into something that turned into my passion, and that's just kind of where it's went from there,
That's pretty cool. It's amazing how I think more careers find us than we find careers.
Yeah, because I had no idea. Like I wanted to be a trainer.
Right.
Like I wanted to be, I wanted to go start colts, and that's what I like to do. And then I started building saddles, and I was like, well, it kind of fits in my life, So it just all worked out, and that's kind of how it all got started.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And
yeah, but so these trees. So this is a roping tree, and then that's a barrel tree.
okay.
There's so much that goes into it, and I think the biggest problem with Western saddle fit is someone has a problem and they Google it.
Oh, let's just say I don't think that's Western saddle fit. I think that's life.
Life. You Google it. So
Right.
then when you Google it, you get 50,000 answers, and then you leave more confused than when you started.
Oh, I'm telling you, and the internet it's kind of like paper, right? It'll let you write whatever you want on there.
Right.
So,
It doesn't matter. So it's a tricky thing. I think the biggest thing with them is as far as there's several topics I want to talk about, because I think that people get so caught up in dry spots.
right.
Dry spots is huge. People freak out over dry spots.
So just for our listeners, let's describe when you say dry spot, what do you mean?
Like when you ride your horse and you get off of them and they're sweating and they have a patch on their back, normally behind their shoulder where they have atrophy. And that's where people they get a little wild about it. They freak out. So just as a good rule of thumb, a big dry spot does not cause pain.
Right.
A little dry spot causes pain.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the little dry spot is hard pressure.
All right.
The big dry spot is no contact.
Okay.
Okay, so to make those big dry spots go away, you have to do it with padding.
Makes sense.
Because they're obviously either the horse is growing, the horse is maybe not up to par as far as weight, maybe the horse is being rehabbed, or maybe the horse has age on it and has a dropped back or something. There's so many things. Each horse is individual.
Well, and then that's something we talked about in our last saddle fit episode. We talked about as well, that you brought up, is a horse is growing, a horse is developing, a horse has had atrophy, and now we're getting this top line back. And things have to change. With English saddles, they can change flocking and stuff, but
Right.
we use a lot more pads.
We use padding
in
in the Western world.
Right.
And there's so many, buy this pad, it fixes everything. And that's not true. There's two types of horses that's the hardest to fit. Obviously, a growing horse, you have to adjust because they're growing.
Right.
Starting from a 2-year-old to a 7-year-old, there's going to be some changes in there, that you're going to have to adjust. But as far as padding, the worst ones are the extreme backed horses, the ones that have extremely long withers.
Right.
I had a barrel horse that taught me a lot about this, and he was a son of Dash to Fame. And I remember I was still working for Sharon at that time and Tom, and I kept telling her I had bought a saddle for him and had bought another saddle for him. And I went and I told her, I was like, I'm changing these pads and I'm doing what you're saying, but it's not working. She's like, bring him here and let me look at him. And she had 30 years of experience, with fitting and doing and building and everything. And I took him down there and she's like, wow, I've never seen a horse. And so she's like, go get me the tape measure. So I went and got the tape measure and we pulled it out, and his width from his shoulder to the end of his wither was 14 inches.
That's long.
That's long. That's huge, And so he taught me so much about saddle fit. He was very A-framed, but had an extremely long wither. So when I would have to pad him to try to help him, but then when you put too much pad on him, it hit the ground seat and it pulled your saddle back. And you can, there's so many people that say that about saddle fit. Well, my saddle slides back. Well, most of the time on those horses that the saddle slides back on, they have a very extreme back.
Right.
They have a long wither or they have an extreme drop. They'll have an 8-inch difference between the top of their wither and the bottom, where their back drops. So with him, what we did was we actually took a pad and I put it on his back and we cut it out around his wither. And then I put a thin pad on top of it, and my saddle never moved again.
Yep.
But that's what people don't realize. That's one thing Sharon did teach me about the extreme back horses. You have to fill in what's low and expose what's high.
That makes sense.
So like with the barrel saddles, you know, they have a high swell on them versus like the roping saddle is lower.
Right.
You know, because it needs to be lower for more, you know, contact the pull, so that way it doesn't snap the horse. And then on the barrel saddles, you know, they're higher, and so they have a higher swell here. So you can fill in that low spot, put another pad on top of it, and it's still way, way off of the wither.
Right.
So,
But, and, you know, and it's two different jobs. You know, when you're looking ropers versus barrel horses, and even when you get into cutters,
Cutting and
pleasure
reining.
horses, you know, all this matters what the horse does, because if you don't want to use a rope saddle for a barrel horse or a barrel saddle for a rope horse, especially
right.
going the other way. One, the horn's not going to hold up.
yeah,
on a
yeah,
barrel,
no,
but-
it's not. Well, it's still attached the same because they're both metal. As you can see, that's a metal horn. This
Right.
is a metal horn just covered in rawhide. The only difference is that with that swell being so much higher, and the horns are actually attached the same way.
Oh, wow.
But it's when the force of the swell being thinner, you see how much thicker this rope is? Thinner and taller. So when you pull it, it has more chances to break.
Yep.
The horns actually don't break. It's actually the swells that
Right.
break.
I guess that's where I was going.
Yeah,
with
yeah,
The swells, not the horn.
Yeah, the actual swells is what snaps on there, you know, for sure.
So when you're looking at them, because we're talking about the trees first,
Yeah.
and I love the rawhide tree, and I think what always amazes me when we get into things, and I've seen a lot of trends over the years, is it seems like we always go back to old school.
And I think
Wood,
back to the
rough-
basics is
yes.
what we need to do. I think we have gotten so big into just selling something. You know,
Right.
this is the new thing. You know, this is the new tree. This is the new saddle pad. This is the new girth, the new bridle, whatever. You know, the new bit. In barrel racing, it's all about the bit. You know, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I run barrels myself, so you know we got to have a lot of bits. But you know, going back to the basics, you know, I think in what we've tried to do, and I'm not opposed to helping anybody with any brand of saddle. It don't have to be mine, and I'll tell people that. I'm like, just bring your horse and let me look at it, and maybe I can help you, you know, get by until you can find something different or whatever. But you know, not too narrow, not too wide, you know, and bar angle is huge, and it's so technical. Like there's a lot to it. You know, everybody throws out the word. It used to be all about the gullet size.
Right.
Everything. Well, I have to have a 7. I have to have an 8. I have to have a 6.5. I have to, whatever. But you can take one, and I actually have a little bit right here. So you can actually take one gullet and, hold on here. Pull it.
If y'all are watching or listening, if you get a chance, jump on YouTube so you can see some of this.
Yeah,
You
this
can
is.
see the pictures.
Yeah, so these pictures right here, so this is the difference. You know, everybody talks about the full quarter horse bar, the semi quarter horse bar, or the regular, you know, everybody talks about those. And I think the biggest thing is what people need to understand, it's not the gullet size that makes that much of a difference. And that was when I first called the tree maker, and I wanted like this big, massive tree. And they were like, "Do you?"
Right.
And I said, "Well, yeah, that's what I've been, you know, this is what I've been taught. Yes, we want this extra wide, da 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 da, you know." And they're like, and this sweet man, he's not with Precision anymore. These are Bowden saddle trees, but when I first got started, I used Precision. And this sweet man named Tom Stevenson, he took a lot of time with me, and he explained it to me. And he was like, "You know, I fit horses all over Texas." And he said, "I go and I fit them." And he says, "Those don't fit them." And I was like, "Okay, well, what fits them?" And so then, you know, he broke it down and he explained to me how you can take, and this one right here is the one that's really important, how you can take, because right now everybody's big on degrees. Okay,
Right.
in the Western world, I got to have a 40-degree bar and a 42, and you know, it's just another one of those things to complicate things to make you where you don't understand it. But these pictures right here really show you. So this is considered a narrow, so a 6.5-inch gullet. But look at a 42-degree, a 40, and a 38. Look at the difference in how.
That's a big difference.
Now that's the same size gullet.
Right.
Gullet is not changed. Only the degree of the bar is changed.
Well, and the bars would actually contact the horse,
The bars,
not the gullet.
not the gullet, and I think when you get too wide, so like you get down here to a 7, and you have the 42, and so I asked my tree maker, I called him and I said, listen, I said, everybody wants to know what degree is your saddles, like what's your trees, your barrel trees, and I was like, what's the correct answer? I want to give an educated answer here. What's the correct degree of our trees? And he said, well, he just kind of laughed. He said, oh, goodness, it's, everybody's on this bandwagon now. And I said, I know. I said, but give me an educated answer. That's what I need. And he said, well, all of them start at a 45, and I can go anywhere you want me to go with them. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, that's what I needed to know. So I think with ours, when Derek and I first started, we decided, we ride a lot of horses. We've imported Friesians. Mm-hmm. We just sent a Swedish warm blood home that we started. We ride everything. We ride every breed. We ride mules. Okay, right. We ride everything from mules to Friesians to gypsies to drafts to you name it. We ride every breed, and everybody asked. Amy showed up one day and she goes, "Girl, what won't you ride?" And I said, "Anything that pays, we'll ride it."
That's it.
So you just have to ride it. So.
This sounds a lot like when I was shoeing. The first thing you buy as a farrier is you think you need to buy a hoof gauge.
Yeah.
That's what you go buy as a hoof gauge.
Right.
And I owned one. I honestly don't know where it is because when I actually started learning, because everybody talk about the horse needs to be at this angle, this angle, this angle. Well, when I started learning, it's like no, the horse needs to be at its angle.
Its angle. That's right.
Not yours.
Not yours.
And I haven't touched a hoof gauge in 20 years.
Yeah, because of that.
I know where mine is.
Well, and what's funny is when you first start doing something, you wanna gauge everything and you wanna measure it. And I remember when I first started at Caldwell's and I said, "Hey, Sharon's asked me to do something," and she says, "Oh, that's about 5/8 of an inch," and I was like, 5/8 of an inch. So I went and got the ruler and I measured. I was like, doggone, So, but now I'll look at it and I'll be like, no, that's about a 3/4. But once you do it so long, you train your eye to look for things and to look for, and so like going back to like saddle fit on horses. When I first look at a horse, I walk around them. I look at that horse's conformation. I look if they have one shoulder bigger than the other shoulder, which is extremely common and people don't think it is.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm like, well, we're not normal. Like our feet, one foot's bigger than the other or one hand or whatever, So it's just their dominant side, or an injury. You don't know. Like I had this one person that brought their horse. And when they unloaded it, I was like, have you ever noticed the scars on it? They had never even noticed the scars. This horse had scars around its belly. I don't know what kind of wreck it got into, but the scars were just brutal. And I was like, well, you're always going to have to be careful with the way you cinch this horse.
Right.
Because, he's got scars there, So there's some, I think, each horse is that, as you know from all your years of being a vet, each horse is different. I think if you do a average, find something that's a middle of the road. Don't go too wide. Don't go too narrow. Try to buy good quality. I understand that, they're expensive. I get it. They're expensive. But if you always find something that's used, that's older, you're better off than to buy new that's cheaper.
One of the things that I've seen over the years with saddle fit and stuff is, if you think about it, by the time you come in, and I'm probably the only veterinarian that's like trying to kill my own business here, but
yeah.
By the time you come see me 3 times for back issues or for shoulder issues or for soreness, especially sore backs, I think sore backs, saddle fit's a big culprit of that.
Absolutely.
By the time you come see me a few times for that, you realize the money you could have spent.
And just bought a good saddle.
And bought a good saddle.
Absolutely. Especially when you get into, you've caused kissing spine and all kinds of stuff like that, But I do think, and I don't know, I'll ask your opinion about this. So when the tree, the whole reason that the Western tree was designed was to distribute the rider's weight out evenly across the horse's back instead of being in one spot, riding them bareback, you know. I believe that bar, they need to have the spine relief. and the bar needs to follow the horse along that loin. But I think the problem with these really wide trees is they get to where they're sitting out almost on the top of their ribs instead of sitting on the loins.
I agree with that. I'll agree 100% with that, because one of the things I always think about when I'm looking at how that saddle sits on the back is you want that even distribution, but
Right.
it needs to be even distribution in the right spot.
Right.
And I love to look at them without a pad on, because, you know, with some of these pads, you throw them on and like, oh, it's got good contact. Well, except that the pad's really compressed in one spot and barely compressed in the other.
Yeah, that's right.
I said, well, that's not good contact.
That's not.
That's uneven contact. And if you watch enough of these horses, I mean, I can go through and you start pressing on their back, and because most of the time when you palpate a horse's back and they're sore, it's not the spine that hurts, it's those epaxial muscles.
Yeah.
And you'll hit that spot, and sure enough, when you
They'll
throw the
drop down.
saddle up, you've got more pressure in that area than in the others.
Yeah, that's where you get the bridging. You
Right.
know, I mean, they need a lot of really flat trees. You know, they'll bridge on them more. You know, I think all of them need to have a little rock to the bar, you know, to where they come in like an hourglass. I mean, because as Derek was telling you earlier, you know, we reached out to a master saddle maker who makes custom trees, and you know, we were wanting more knowledge, because we're like, there's more. You know, we know there's more. You can always learn. No matter how long you've been doing it, you can always.
Yes.
One horse is going to teach you so much, you know, and when you run into that problem, you have to go seek knowledge. And so we called him. His name's Matt, and we're like, hey, you know, we're having these problems, and he started explaining it to us, and you know, he's a Wyoming cowboy, you know, and he says, let me ask you a question. And I was like, okay, lay it on me. And he goes, if you line up all these horses in a row and you walk down and you look at the horses and look at the shape of them, just the shape. He's like, look at them from an angle, you know, like a 3/4 angle, and look at them and look at all their shapes. He's like, what do you see? And so I thought about it for a minute, and I visualized horses tied up and walking down through them and looking at them. All horses, with the exception of a gypsy or a halfling or something, you know, that's a fat little pony, you know, they have an hourglass shape to them.
Right.
You know, they have their shoulders, and then they come in, and then they go back out to their barrel. You know, they have that hourglass. He says, you know, you need to build a saddle, and in his words, so you don't have to shoot the saddle when you shoot the horse. And I was like, you know, true.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, and he's right. You know, you want a saddle that's going to fit a wide variety of horses.
Right.
And he said, you know, you need a little more of a rock to them, because horses don't have flat backs. Even a flat-backed horse is not technically.
It's not flat.
He's not really flat. He's not. And I tell people that about pads. I'm like, hold up your pad and go stand and look at your horse. And does it match your horse's shape of its back? And most of the time, they're straight.
Right.
And I was like, so what happens when you have a straight pad is you put it on there, and then right here where their low spot is, it's going to bunch up underneath there, because there's no way for that pad to go. And especially when they're new, you know, they're so stiff. And so, you know, I'm a big fan of contour pads. I think contour pads are really important, because I think they help a lot.
I would agree. And one of the things that I think when we talk about Western saddles, we talk about the trees a lot, we talk about pads a lot, but one of the things that I think often gets forgotten is the rigging.
The rig, and that was one of the topics that I really wanted to talk about today was the rig. And I have a
because where I notice this is I have two completely different saddles. I've got an old Ammerman classic rope saddle.
Yep.
Rode it for years. And then my favorite saddle in the whole world is I had a custom A-fork Wade built.
Yeah.
Love it. When you look at the rigging on those two saddles and where they sit and where the rigging is and how it's set up, two completely different rigs.
Totally.
I mean, completely different.
Well, the biggest reason, so I believe, so here's like the different rig positions. We have a full rig, which is directly under the swell. We have a 7/8, a 3/4, a 5/8, and a center fire. I like to rig most of my barrel saddles are 3/4 to 7/8 to a 3/4. I kind of do it depending on the tree. But your roping saddles, so there's a reason why they have to be full rigged. If a roping saddle is not full rigged, when it'll do one or two things. Either it's going to slide back or it's going to run up their neck. And if it's rigged too far back, it's going to run up the horse's neck. And if it's not rigged properly, like you got it at, if you've got it at a 3/4, but then the bar's not 100%, then you'll get the sliding back. But if a roping saddle has to be full rigged, because so that way it's low profiled and on the horse's back, so when they take the hit of the steer, it's not going to hurt them.
Right.
If it's running up their neck onto their shoulders, it's not going to work either. And I know there's such controversy over the saddle needs to be behind the shoulder in Western, not in English. English, they're straight behind the shoulder, but they don't have any skirt.
Right.
So I think that's a big misconception with Western saddles. Western saddles, you have so much skirt in front. And a barrel saddle, I like to rig them a little further back because, you're racing.
Right.
You need to be up on their shoulders racing, ready to go. Roping, there's no way possible for it to be all the way up on their shoulders. It's not... the horses can't handle it. It has to be back where it's meant to be. But even the barrel saddles that are rigged a little further back, they're still not up all the way on they're not on their neck.
Right.
There is a spot on a horse's back where a saddle goes.
Yes.
It's not on their butt and it's not on their neck.
Well, and I've seen both those extremes. I remember for a while they were like, "Oh, the Indians rode way back here."
On their butts.
On their butt.
Yeah.
So we need to have saddles back here. I'm like, well, hold up.
And that's uncomfortable. Have you ever rode back there?
Oh, yeah.
It's horrible.
I'm like, this is not good.
Not at all.
And I was like, why is that? Like, that's where the Indians rode. Why does that have anything to do with us?
But I think what got that started was the dressage and the English world put their saddles behind the shoulders. Well, the Western saddle, the tree is still technically behind the shoulders.
Right.
But the skirt is deceiving. But they were taking the front of the Western saddle and moving it back as far as the English saddle.
Yes.
And that's where there's a little confusion there. But in my opinion, I think there is a spot where the saddle sits on a horse's back. And there's that sweet spot, and that's where it sits on them. Now, there is exception to the rule of all of this because, as you know, if a horse gains weight, loses weight, in shape, not in shape, older, younger, there's so much that goes into this. But, I think, at the end of the day, you need to have a flared bar to where that horse's shoulder will pass.
Now, that's something I agree 100% on because I have seen there for a while there was a trend to not have those flared bars. They were really, really straight.
Really straight.
And these horses' shoulders, they would not free up.
And they were getting stopped,
Yes.
they can't, you want them to be able to stride out fully.
The saddle shouldn't interfere.
It shouldn't interfere. It should help.
Yes.
It should help you and it should help the horse. So I have a recent case of this. So I had a lady call me and I'm real laid back about things. Like I'm not pushy. I don't, if you want to buy a good saddle from me, that's fine. If you want me just to help you, that's fine. I just try to stay, neutral to it. If you come and ask me for help, I'll help you. I'm not going to go out thinking I can change the world because, I'm just not. I'm not going to do that. If you want me to help you, I'll help you. If you don't, I'm okay either way, And I've learned that. I've matured. In the beginning,
Yep.
I thought I had to help everybody.
Exactly.
And now I'm like, I'm just matured, and you learn as you go and do things. And but I had a lady, she called me and she's like, hey, my horse bucks every time I take it through the pattern. And I was like, well, she says, is there any way I can pay you to come out? And I said, well, if you bring it to me, I'll do it. No, I need you to come here. So I said, all right, well, you're going to have to pay me to come, but I'll come. So she paid me to come out, and we looked at her horse, and I was like, wow. Now, this was a case, the tree was not bridging. All the weight of the tree had too much contour. So it was hitting the horse right in the middle of the back. All pressure was like right in the middle. And that horse was sore, and he was ill. Like he was ill about it. And I don't blame him. I would be too. And I told her, I said, let's take and, let's look at it. So we put the tree on him. And then I took all the trees I had the one that I had that fits a Frisian, I had the roping saddle, I had the barrel saddle. Any tree I had in the shop, I took it. And I said, I want to show you the difference of what these trees look like on a horse. And she's like, okay. So we put the Frisian one on there, and I mean, she had a little quarter horse, you know. I mean, it was terrible. And I said, do you see how bad this is? And she was like, yeah. I was like, okay. So then I was like, then we pulled out the other one, and then we pulled out the other one, and I said, now which one do you think looks good? I showed her what to look for. I said, you know, you want even contact from front to back, but you don't want the back of the bar and the front of the bar touching. You want that to be flared away from the horse. I said, not extreme to where it's sticking up or poking out or, you know, anything weird. But when you put that bare tree on them, you don't want it to be digging in with no weight. You know, because, I mean, you got to think, you got to put your weight on top of that too. And she was like, wow. So I said, well, hey, I said, and just happened, I had made one. And I said, let's just put it on your horse. So we put it on, and she goes out there and rides in it. And you know, she goes in, and I'm real big on, I like to put a nice pocket, because I think a nice deep seat is good, especially for a barrel racer. Barrel racing myself, you know, you need a deep seat in there to stick with some of these fire-breathing dragons that we ride. And so, you know, it has a nice deep seat in it. I try to make sure that the fenders are a little more forward hung so you don't get your feet behind you. So she gets out there and she's riding around, and I mean, I don't know what the horse does. I've never seen the horse go. I mean, he looked great to me, you know, so I'm just watching her, and then she turns, and I was like, well, take him through the pattern. She's like, okay. So she turns around and she takes him through the pattern, and I mean, this lady's just livid, excited. She's like, you don't understand. I've never taken him through without him bucking.
Right.
I was like, never? And she's like, never. And it was the first time the saddle was put on him. So, I mean, and I'm not saying that it's the miracle cure, you know, because I think we get a little too caught up in that, you know. But I do believe it's hard to beat a good fitting saddle.
Well, what I like to relate it to, because it's the closest thing I think people can understand, is if you've ever been backpacking, and I put on a poorly fitting pack.
Yeah.
I thought packs hung off your shoulders. No, packs sit around your waist. The shoulder just keeps it in place.
Yeah.
And I remember I had and this was just a backpack. And I've had regular packs that were fit to me. I can walk for days, no issues. Yeah. And I just had I got a new backpack to travel with through the airport.
Yeah.
And this is just like a book bag.
Yeah.
And I've got this thing on my back. Don't even have that much weight. I was crippled. And all I did was go through the Atlanta airport, fly somewhere, and go through the Denver airport. Yeah. But I had that backpack carrying it, and I was crippled. Yeah. I threw it away. Yeah. Because I never want to be tempted to pick it up again. Yeah. And so, and it was amazing, because just changing backpacks, like all of a sudden, it was completely different.
Completely different, yeah.
And I think about it a lot with saddles is, you know, you've got a saddle, you got a rider. If this starts restricting movement, if this is putting pressure where it doesn't need to be, this is uncomfortable. This is miserable. Yeah.
And, you know, I never realized, I guess, you know, you get spoiled because you ride in a good saddle all the time. And, you know, we use Herman oak leather, which is the best leather. Yep. I mean, it's soft, it's supple, it's easy to work with, it's phenomenal to tool. And, you know, but then I always heard people complain about their knees and their ankles hurting. And I was always like, I don't understand, because my knees and ankles never hurt. Like, I don't know what they're talking about. Well, then I got in. We have an old, like, I don't know, it's probably 35-year-old Martha Josie saddle. And, you know, it's been around forever, and it's stiff and old, and it's still a good saddle. But you get in that thing and you ride in it, and you're like, oh, my knees hurt. You know? But, you know, there's a difference in quality no matter what. You know, there's a difference in quality. And you're right. I mean, when your saddle, I think the people saddles that have to fit the best, and this has taught me a lot in building saddles for mules, people that trail ride and cowboys that sit in a saddle. When you ride 18, 25 miles a day, and we've done it. Derek and I, we've trail ridden a bunch, and my little boy now, Edgar, he rides 4.5-hour trail rides already, and he's fixing to be 5, October 6th. And that your saddle needs to fit on a trail ride. Oh, yeah. Because you don't realize when you go those long miles of walking and climbing hills and going down hills, but if you really want to know if your saddle fits or not, aside from if you don't think that dry spots are an issue, or, you know, you don't feel like your horse is sore or anything, you go up and down a hill. And when you go up and down a hill and the way that horse's shoulders move going down or up a hill, it'll tell you. Like it'll tell you where, if you're getting too much pressure in certain spots.
No, and that's absolute truth because, I was lucky. My first saddle was an old school Carl Ammerman, and that was one of the most comfortable rope saddles I've ever ridden. And then later on, when I was doing a lot of cowboying, I became friends with a saddle maker out in Colorado, Chuck Templeton, and he built me an A4 Wade.
Yeah.
And I remember that thing was built, and I thought I was really comfortable.
Until you rode in that one?
Until I rode in that one.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, 12 hours, and I mean, I literally was getting off the horse. And I was younger back then, but you'd still step off after a long day, and it'd take you a minute.
Stiff.
You'd be stiff. Yeah. And I was getting off his, and I was like, I'm not stiff anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it's more than just how you fit in the saddle, but it's how comfortable the horse is under the saddle because they're going to move easier.
They're going to move better. Yeah. It's way more comfortable. Well, their gaits are more comfortable.
Yes.
That's the thing. Like, I mean, they stride out better and they can stop better. And even in, rein and cut and, that whole world, I mean, same thing. I mean, if it gets to pushing on their shoulders too much or digging in their loins too much or whatever, it causes soreness.
Well, and if you think about, especially from a reining perspective, what those horses are out there doing.
No, and they got to stop hard.
Yes. I mean, it is. And I think that's the thing is, one saddle doesn't fit all. And a lot of these reining horse trainers I work in for, you go in and, I mean, there's 20 saddles hanging on the wall. And they figure out, like, this horse rides and stops better than this one.
And this one, yeah.
And
all that has to do with, what type of tree's in it, how much relief they have on their shoulders or whether that one has a little more twist or this one may be, a little flatter or, whatever, but you have to be, I think it's our job as horsemen to just pay attention to what's going on. Don't be overcritical because, there is certain points in time in their life to where if they're really old and have a dropped back, you're going to pat them the best you can. And, or when they're growing, it's really hard when they're growing because they'll be downhill and then they level out and they're downhill, So it's just be willing to learn and be open.
I think listening to your horse, I think that's the part you have to remember. If something doesn't feel right, investigate,
figure it out.
This should be comfortable for you. It should be comfortable for the horse. This shouldn't be a fight.
That's
if it's a fight, why is this a fight?
That's right. No, but when we first started and you were talking about fitters, like my friend who rides dressage, they have a fitter for everything. They have a bridle fitter. They have a saddle fitter. They have all kinds of stuff. And I think as Western, we just kind of throw it on and go.
Right.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm not saying we have to be overcritical of everything. Just if you think there's a problem there, find somebody that can help you dig a little deeper.
Well, and a good friend of mine brought this up. She's a veterinarian and she's also a chiropractor, rides dressage. And, I was talking to her one time. I was like, because I was really struggling to understand why saddle fit was important because I was like, Jen, my saddles fit about everything. And she made a great point. She's like, you rode quarter horses, right? I said, yeah. You rode horses that you cowboyed on, right? I said, yeah. She goes, did they all look about the same?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, they did.
Yeah.
And she goes, think about that. And then, so it really got me thinking, if you look at the English world, there's huge variations between these warm bloods, thoroughbreds, Friesians, huge variation. But in my opinion now, when I look at the modern day quarter horse, you look at a reiner, a cutter, a rope horse, and a barrel horse.
Huge difference.
Well, they don't even look like the same breed.
But you think about, Phil, from where we are now to where we used to be. We used to have breeds all around horses.
Right.
Now we specifically breed a horse, barrel horse, reining horse, cutting horse, dressage horse. We single trait breed them.
Right.
So we have, and in single trait breeding them, you have taken away a lot of toughness and a lot of, I think, stamina just to stand the test of time for years. But because of that, we've changed their conformation.
completely refine the breeds depending on what they do.
But depending on what they do, so that's what we have to take into consideration now from where we have changed so much. Like barrel horses are extremely straight-shouldered.
Yes.
I mean, extremely straight-shouldered. So when you look at something that's so straight-shouldered, that's why you have to take into account to move the rig back a little bit further, for them. And I hate to say it, like with the roping horses, now they're putting running horses in them because all these futurities have gotten so big. So now they're crossing cow and run.
Right.
So we're going to get some more straight shoulders in the rope horses now. So now the rope horses are going to look more like barrel horses versus, looking like a cow horse.
100%. And then you go look at a cutter, and a cutter looks like none of them.
No, and the cutters used to be the stout, but now they're small and refined, and it's I don't know, so it's there's a lot to it, there's a lot to saddle fit, but I don't think it needs to be just because we ride Western we shouldn't care about it.
100%, I agree. 100%.
I think we do need to care about it.
Well, I feel like I'd say in the last couple of years working on more Western horses, I've noticed that saddle fit is more important. And I've often gone through and thought, is this because I'm paying attention to it, or is this becoming real? And I think it goes back to what you said. Now these horses are purpose bred. Mm-hmm. I remember a barrel horse was you had a quarter horse and it happened to be fast.
It happened to be fast. And
so
you know what you
horse.
did? You showed it in halter, Western Pleasure. You jumped it, and then you changed saddles and you ran barrels on it. That's what you did.
And you look at a rope horse, it was, it had the right build and the right mindset.
And most of the time, rope horses were ranch horses.
Yeah, they were just ranch horses, and they made rope horses. That's not the case anymore.
It's not the case. And they've gotten so fast. You think about, I was just telling that this past weekend was our NBHA state show. Mm-hmm. In the open class, 772 entries in the open class. One day, a 14-1 was run. There was only 8 horses in the 1D out of 772 head.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wicked. These horses are wicked.
Looking at the speeds now compared to 15 years ago.
Wicked.
And I say this all the time. If you go back and look at the top horse, if you go back 15 years ago, and I don't care what discipline it is, barrel horses, rope horses, cutters, dressage horses, jumpers, go look at the best of the best 20 years ago. You wouldn't have that horse in your barn today.
Yeah, it's true.
It has changed that fast.
It has changed that fast. And it's crazy how we have bred them. It's just all changed, And so with that, conformations have changed.
A lot.
And that's where I think that's where all these fit problems or even problems in general have come from, because we don't just breed them. And as Derek says, in the cattle business, they cull them.
Right.
We don't cull them in horses.
No.
We just try to breed. Well, this mare has bad feet. Well, it's all right. We'll breed her to a stud that's got good feet. It'll be fine. And that's you laugh, but that's what we do.
Now you're getting into where this is the soapbox I get on all the time, is how many people come in and said, well, she went lame, so good thing she was a mare, we could breed her.
We could breed her, yeah.
I was like, she went lame at 5.
Yeah.
And we bred her, and we wonder why her offspring are lame. At 5.
Well, and that's what Derek, he's always said about culling them. He said, if we culled horses like we cull cows, he said, but they have to, a cow, difference is they have to survive on their own.
Right.
If they're bad-footed, they have to go.
Yep.
A horse, we've domesticated them so much, we just put them in a stall and pamper them more.
Oh, yeah.
Like you said, that's a whole other soapbox.
But I do think as these breeds become more and more refined, I think we're going to see a lot more need for proper saddle fit, because I would love to stand, if I could stand a ranch horse in the middle, put a barrel horse, because I feel like that's one extreme over here.
Yeah.
And then put a reiner over here and look at them and say, these are the same breeds.
Yeah.
And none of them,
they're all quarter horses.
They're all quarter horses, but they are not.
They're not the same.
They're not the same horse.
They're not the same.
Nowhere near the same horse.
No, definitely not.
These race bred barrel horses, they are, to me, they almost look more like thoroughbreds did 20, 25 years ago. They've thinned them out.
They're big bodied.
Right.
So, and I do think the one thing with saddle fit on certain horses, people will look at a horse like my mare that I ride. Big bodied mare, huge, big barrel. She's about 15 but just big.
Right.
But she is so thin and like A-frame shouldered. Like she doesn't have big shoulders.
Right.
But people see her and like, what's that? And she's a big mare. She's long. She's big. Oh, she needs a huge saddle. She doesn't.
No.
And it's like draft horses. Draft horses are very deceiving too. Draft horses are made to pull.
Right.
So draft horses have no shoulders.
None.
They are straight up and down. They're just they're A-frame, straight A-frame. So, you know, people, I think that's something that when you look at a horse, don't judge it by their body mass at the bottom, you know, because they always want to look at their ribs and or their fat or whatever, you know. But there's so much that goes into it, you know. And back bar spread, you know, you can change it. I think the most important to finish up about the trees and what's important. I don't believe that you have to have the widest gullet. I think that's a misconception. I do believe that the bottom bar spread right here, talking about the degrees, is the most important. They all need to have a flare. And then this back bar flare back here, measurement wise, is really important because that spreads out and gives your spine relief, and makes sure, you know, it doesn't need to be too wide, but it doesn't need to be too narrow. Would be, you know, some of my last thoughts on, you know, Western saddle fit.
You know, I think if I was going to sum it up, I think just good rule of life and anything's avoid extremes.
Avoid extremes. Extremely narrow, extremely wide.
Right.
And padding. Don't fall for a lot of gimmicks. Gimmicks and pads. If you have an extreme horse, hey, reach out to me. I'll be glad to help you. Because
the thing I like to remind people too when it comes to pads is pads wear out.
And they need to be cleaned. And hard spots cause problems.
Yes.
Definitely.
And I tell people all the time, like I had a bulldogging horse come in, and I laugh because the mom had told the son, like, hey, we need to get a new pad. He's like, oh, it's fine.
It's fine, yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, he was sliding down off this bulldogging horse, and then the horse kept ducking out left. I mean, just was ducking out. And the horse came in, I started palpating the back, and sure enough, he was sore as could be on that left side. Because when he was sliding off, he was pulling on that horn, and that pad was completely. I mean, we looked at it; it was
hard.
rock hard.
Yes.
And it was a wool pad, and the wool pad had compressed. I bet it compressed 3/8 of an inch.
Oh, it's wild what pads do.
And it was the simple fix of we just need to change the pad.
We need to change the pad, and you know I've had that happen so many times. Just changing a pad, and people don't, and cleaning them's fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with getting them cleaned and doing, but you know, sometimes you just have to throw them away and start over.
Yeah, they wear out.
They wear out. They're just wore out. You know, it's like changing brakes on your car, or you know, that's why I tell people about fenders wearing out. I'm like, fenders are going to wear out. They're meant to wear out. That's what they're supposed to do. You know, replace them. No big deal. But I mean, sometimes just replace the pad. Right. And a friend of mine that trail rides had an issue like that. And I kept telling her, she's like, I never had these spots before. And I said, you need to get a new pad. I said, you ride 20 miles, and she trail rides all over the country and travels. And I was like, need a new pad. Buy a new pad, a good contoured, thick, which I recommend like a Mitex pad for her, because she puts a lot of miles on them, and they're thick and they're bigger, and you know they cover the horse's back for saddle pad, for the bags, and you know just comfort for it. Well, she rides mules and stuff too, but. You know, I mean, I just a good pad, but padding is important.
100%. Like, padding's important, and I think the big thing to remember is, like, things wear out.
They wear out.
They wear out. You've got to stay up on the maintenance of your equipment, and the equipment's more than just the saddle. It's staying up on the maintenance of your equipment and make sure your equipment fits properly. Checking. That when I was flying, I loved it because what did we do? Every time we got in this plane, we did a walk-around inspection on the plane every single time. And this thing went in and saw the mechanic every year, and it got a full tear-down and inspection of this plane. Yeah. That's why we have planes built in the 60s that still operate like they're brand new, because when equipment would wear on them, we replaced the equipment.
Right.
And if we did the same thing with our gear.
In the Western world.
Yes.
English, they are all about care and inspecting and making sure everything is perfect. I mean, you think about English riders, they wash their saddle pads, their polos, they wash them. I mean, all the time. Like, we really should take etiquette from English people on all of that care, because I get some saddles in and I'm like, listen, this tie strap is going to break. Yeah. Like, it's going to break, and you're going to be running down the alley, and this is going to break, and you're going to come off and have a bad accident. Like, please replace a $35 tie strap.
I was big on that on my breast collars. One of the things every year is the straps that held my breast collar on. Those got replaced every year, whether needed or not.
Yeah, those tug straps, they break easy.
Yeah, one time I had dallied off and I went to pull and it broke. You want to talk about train wreck?
Yeah.
That was a mess.
Yeah, it's a mess.
And then, of course, that was early in the day. And it's like, well,
what am I going to do now?
I'm done.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out where can I cobble something together. And I was just done for the day.
Yeah.
Because I didn't take care of my equipment.
That's right.
So
that's exactly right.
So I always like to end things up with if you had to say what's most important. If you had to say, all right, if you'll do these three things, what would those three things be?
Three things for Western saddle fit. I think that you should always do or look out for small spots, small dry spots, roughed up hair. Roughed up hair, small dry spots are really bad. Mm-hmm. Proper padding is huge, is really big. And I think you're better off to go with a middle of the road fit versus extremely wide or extremely narrow. And, of course, like we've talked about, there's a lot that goes into all of it as far as rig placement and everything. But if you pick it up, especially for someone who barrel races or something like that, if you want a rig, to be a little further back than further forward for a barrel racer, for a team roper, it needs to be full rig to fit right. But I think it's important that, obviously when you see a saddle built, you don't know what tree's in it. But when you look at it and you see the skirts, and if the skirts are turned back and you see it, that saddle's going to fit your horse better. If you look at it and the skirts look like this, the skirts are going to dig in that horse's back. So things like those would be the main things I would think about.
I think that's a great point. And, one of the things I like to say a lot is focus on quality.
Yeah, definitely.
Quality. And look at the little things. What I've noticed in life is when you look at some of the little things about the quality of, like you can't see the tree, but when you look at the quality of leather on a saddle, you look at the quality of the stitching, you look at what we'd call little things.
Yep.
What I've always said is if a person pays attention to the little things, they did the big things right.
That's right. That's right.
And quality lasts.
Definitely.
So that'd probably be the only thing I'd add is look for good quality.
Definitely, yeah.
And avoid what am I trying to say? Not trends.
Like fads.
Fads. Avoid fads.
Avoid fads. I think
avoid fads.
In all of the different disciplines, I feel like there's fads. In barrel racing, it's really bad. If somebody says it, then it's golden. And I don't believe that. I feel like you need to be your own judge and make sure that not just because this person uses it, or not just because I say it, like try it. And ride in it and look at it and make sure that it's actually what it's supposed to be, not just be starstruck because this famous person or whatever said this is what works.
Right. That's what works for them.
That's what works for them.
And their horse.
That's right.
So be careful about fads. I think that's every time, and it's funny because I see a lot of fads come and go, and I hate to say it, but I'm getting old enough now. I'm seeing fads come back around the second time.
Yeah, they circle back around. Bling is one of those. When I first started working for Caldwell's Media Chair and would talk about it, we was laughing at all the bling.
Yep.
Now, bling is back.
Yes. So be cautious of those fads out there. So, well, thank y'all for tuning in today. Ashley, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for
if y'all
having
got
me.
questions on Western saddles, y'all go visit Ashley up at Kowalsky Saddle Shop. April, thanks for putting this together. Casey, thanks for doing all the editing. And from all of us here at Countryside Equine, we appreciate y'all listening. Take care.